And I know how tough it is juggling kids. But even if you haven't got kids, and it's tough. You could be perimenopausal. You could be a young professional and be real. I try to be as real as I can.
Welcome to another episode of Superwoman Isn't Real. And today I am so excited to have a guest that we've really wanted on for a little while, Alice Mackintosh, who is a registered nutritionist. She is a mum of 2 little kids, something that we share, 2 littler kids than mine actually. So at a slightly different stage, but I've been through it and I know exactly what you're going through. And the founder of Equi London, which is a supplementation brand, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. But Alice is the perfect person to talk to us today about everything that women might be missing and needing, and maybe not even aware that they're lacking in their day-to-day diets and supplements. And it's something that I think applies to a lot of us, especially as we get older. Yeah. And things don't go as smoothly as they once did. So talking from experience in my 30s, I think supplementation is now a must, just for me to feel my absolute best. So I'm very excited to get into a lot of that. But thank you for coming on, Alice. And as always, we include social media handles so you can follow Alice and her journey with Equi. Let's start with where you're at today. So you are, thank you for coming on, because you've got a 9-month-old.
Oh, yes. He's 10 months today.
10 months today.
So, yeah. I mean, do you know what? It's really nice to be doing stuff again and using my brain. Yes. I wanted to get back to work earlier this time, the second time around, but wasn't able to. And I can tell you all about that, but now that I am getting back to more work, and don't get me wrong, I'm still spending time with my baby. I had him this morning and, I need that time with him and of course my eldest son. It's nice to use your brain again.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
So your oldest is?
So he's 3.5.
3.5 and 10 months.
And then 10 months, yeah.
Wow. So similar sort of gap to what I had. And it's a roller coaster, isn't it? Because I feel like you discover yourself a little bit again after the first, and you sort of get back into your groove a little bit. And then the second time around, for me, was really different anyway. My pregnancy felt different and my postnatal journey felt different. How's it been for you?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You find yourself again and then you're back into it, which is quite an overwhelming feeling, isn't it? The longer you go, the harder it is to sort of get back into it. But yeah, it's been different and the same. I physically had a very similar pregnancy, actually. Postnatally, I would say it's been much harder second time around for us. Yes. I think, I want to sugarcoat it, but also you can't sugarcoat it. Anyway.
People see the reality anyway. Like I pretend like it's going smoothly, and then friends come out for brunch with us, and I was like, it's not going so great.
But I wouldn't want to sugarcoat it to sort of give off this everything's perfect vibe at all. It's more that you don't want to scare people who are like, oh, I'm about to go and have my second. But I think the main thing is everyone is so different, and the reasons why I found this year hard are different to what I thought they'd be. I thought I'd be finding it hard because the baby would be, difficult or demanding, or maybe they'd have colic like my first one did, or I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure I wouldn't be getting any sleep. Yeah. Actually, those issues are not so bad. It's more to do with just the juggle of the 2 of them. And I think my eldest son is physically very demanding. Yeah. And I had not realised how difficult it would be to have the 2 kids on my own. So I thought I'd be able to get back, and actually even having help, they've struggled with 2 kids on their own, just because I don't know whether it's a boy thing, I'm not sure, but my eldest is just full on. Yeah. And he's 3.5, I still really can't be away too far from him. Yeah. And he just is a nutter. Yeah. And
it's okay, it's your child, you can say that.
Yeah.
No, I know what
and
you
if he's
mean.
listening to this in 10 years' time, I'm really sorry.
I know what you mean though, because it's like you have that experience of the first, but you can immerse yourself fully in the first. And so when I got pregnant again, I was like, I get all the newborn cuddles and everything again, but actually you now have a little functioning human being that is going through and those years, 3.5, my oldest one's 4 now, they're really, really pivotal years. They're starting to really know when mummy's not around, and they're demanding, they want to spend time with you, whereas before they didn't know who was holding them. That's what threw me. I was like, I didn't even account for the fact that I have a whole other child over here that's going to need me in different ways.
And they're going to need you more, actually, because they are a bit put out by this new baby arriving. And we did a lot of preparation on that front, but we bought a little doll and we were changing its nappy and we were doing all that lovely stuff. We prepared him as much as we thought we could.
Yeah.
It wasn't like surprise,
Yeah.
We did all the books, but it still is a big adjustment. He still sometimes tells me he wants the baby to go back in my tummy, and I think, you've got to feel for them. It's hard. It's hard for the oldest child.
It's hard. It's really hard. We actually, because I think Gia was so little, she was only 2. She kind of went with it. So she just was like, and we made her think it's her baby and all that sort of stuff. And it went really, really well. I just thought they'd be at a stage now where they're playing together and they're not. Like they're fighting more than they play. Yeah. But then they're apart and they miss each other. So it's all these wonderful, crazy things of having 2 kids. But what I love is that you are also a founder with the 2 kids, because it's really, really lovely to connect on that, because sort of the reason for the podcast was exactly that. It's this idea that people might see a social media feed, or they might see you running your company and thinking everything's great, and actually it's pretty crazy on a day-to-day basis, but you're also just trying to keep some level of normality for yourself, because you don't want to give up your job and your career.
No.
But 2 is pretty game-changing, I would say. For me, it was anyway.
The jump to 2 has been harder for me than the jump to 1.
Interesting.
And also my first was the pandemic. It was just a whole other world of, it was a different time, wasn't it? It was a different era in so many ways. Now it's been a monumental jump, and I think, I try to be quite real about that.
Yes.
Not that I think for my, on my Instagram, people are not necessarily looking at me to get to hear my daily struggle with the kids.
Yeah.
They want nutrition. They want advice about what to eat and nutrition. So I don't put too much kiddie stuff on there.
Yeah.
But equally, I try to keep it really real.
Yeah.
I'm quite clear about, I don't use filters.
Yeah.
That's not to do with children. Obviously, that's just to do with, I just really believe in keeping it real.
Yeah.
And no judgment to people who do use filters, but I talk a lot about skin. I talk a lot about supporting your skin. And I think to just put filters on all the time just feels really insincere.
I don't know. People are seeing through it now. I don't know about you, but it's like there was the dawn of Instagram, and anything went, and you could put on whatever you wanted, and people didn't even look real. They looked AI generated, and everyone was like, woo. And now I think everyone's just seeing through it. And actually the more real and authentic you show up, the more that's what people really want to see.
Exactly. And I know how tough it is juggling kids, but even if you haven't got kids, and it's tough, and you could be at any age, it could be tough. You could be perimenopausal, you could be you could have teenage kids, or you could be a young professional and not have kids at all. It's tough.
It's tough.
So I just think to put be real. I try to be as real as I can, and without kind of going in on it too much, because that can be a bit boring as well. Just moaning on Instagram non-stop.
People also that don't have kids are just like, oh my God. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I really don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, I completely agree. So you are back at work now. So we're at 10 months. So what's this journey been like? Because I think, and it's really great because you run a brand kind of similar to me, where we, our clients are pre and post natal women, like a lot of our customers are too. So having the discipline to put our own wellness practices in place for ourselves as mums, as founders of these brands. But are you back at work? How are you managing this sort of shift of the second baby?
Yeah, it's just been a matter of feeling it out, really. I mean, I've been online really for the whole time.
Yes.
And, and you kind of have to be.
Because you have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a big sacrifice. Yeah. That doesn't work for everyone. And I had some help, so that wouldn't have been possible without it. Physically, it would have been impossible. Yeah. So I will just be really clear about that, because I think some people might be like, well, I don't have help. So,
just how is that even possible?
You have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
I have a really hands-on husband too, so that's great. But there have been times where I really haven't been able to be online at all, and there have been times where I've been able to do a bit more. And it's been a matter of sort of juggling and just feeling it out. Yeah. I would say I've been back more consistently since the summer ended. The summer holidays was a real eye-opener for me. With now 8 weeks off nursery for my son, which is an absolute eye-opener. Is a nice way to put it.
Me this summer. It's like I felt like summer came, I hadn't thought about it, hadn't really realised both girls were at home, hadn't really taken a second to plan for anything. Yeah. And then suddenly you're in it, and also no one's available to help you because they've already been booked, obviously months in advance. Yeah. And I was just sat there I actually don't know what I'm doing. And so the good news is I've really started planning for next summer because I've realised I can't do this again.
You know, we had like camps cancel on us the night before.
Oh my god!
And we all got COVID. It was just a bit of a long one. So I wasn't able to work as much, certainly in August. But then come September, I've been getting back to it. And then we've changed it so my son's in more nursery and, you know, I've got a bit of help with the baby. So I'm getting into a bit more of a clear rhythm. Whereas before it was just like work whenever I get a second. Then I've also, so with Equi, I have a business partner. So Rosie is the other founder. We founded the company now 8 years ago, but we've known each other since we were 18.
On a journey.
Oh yeah. We need to tell more people that we've been, you know, I don't think it's clear because
it's amazing to hear that.
There are so many supplement brands, aren't there? But you know, we've really stood the test of time, and there's a reason why we've got so many customers that come back to us every month. We've got customers who've been taking us for 8 years.
Wow,
you know, and that's amazing. You know, our return customer rate is exceptional. Wow. Like 70% of our customers come back.
Well, I guess it's because you're right. We need to talk more because I've run my business now, for 7 years. So just 1 year less than you, but people think it's like an overnight thing. So I get that a lot of like, wow, like I'm seeing you guys everywhere now. No, we've been around for ages. And like there were many years when no one had heard of us and we were just doing the hustle. And I think most businesses that you end up hearing about are the businesses that have really gone through it, because anything that is an overnight success has every chance of failing that quickly too. You kind of have to do the test of time to see if you can really got legs in the game. So it's really good to hear that.
Yeah, so Rosie she's also got 2 kids.
Wow.
And they are a little bit older. I think they're similar ages to yours. So they're sort of 8 and 3. Okay. Almost 4, actually. So 8 and 4. And she had a child just as we launched Equi, which was literally just as we launched, which was crazy for her. But it's been, you know, it's what it's meant is that there have been times where I've backed her up when she's not been working. There are times where, you know, she's massively backed me up. So nice. Right now, you know, this year she's been, you know, working a hell of a lot more than I have. And I just haven't physically been able to get back to work in the way I wanted to. And so having a business partner.
That's huge, because actually I know what you mean about the second. It was like I wanted to bounce back in as well, but physically my body was not going to keep up with that. Yeah. I don't know if you felt that too after the second.
It was, do you know what, I suppose I could have forced myself to sort of physically do it. But so for me, actually, it was less that. It was more just that I actually couldn't sit down to work with my 2 kids. Yeah. Because they're just, my son is just not that person. It's not possible. He doesn't sit down and do anything ever. Yeah. You know, I hope at some point he will. But we're not there yet. So it actually just I wasn't able to work. Right. So I mean, I was, you know, look, it's been
Rosie's held the fort.
Yeah, massively. So I've you know, she's majorly had my back, which is so lucky. You know, not everyone has that in their business.
And you have a great co-founder. I mean, I think you were just saying you've known each other since you were
18.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because we hear a lot of co-founder stories that have gone sour, or that, you know, it's not so often you hear that people have been friends and then managed to run a business and then managed to have 4 babies through that business, because you're now on your 4th child since Equi launched, which is amazing. And that's actually amazing to have some type of support like that in your company.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think we could have had 4 kids at the very beginning, both of us, you know, but I think, you know, we've got systems in place, and it's, you know, it's great. I mean, I've been looking forward to getting back to it though, because it is my other baby, and you put so much work into it, and you sacrifice a lot for it over the years. And I think you don't want to be away from it.
No, you don't.
You want to be out there banging the drum.
And it's not just a job. You said, it's your other babies. And people, you know, my mum would be like, slow down after my second, especially, because I was like you. I was online pretty much a few weeks after giving birth and responding to things, because you have to, because you're the final port of call to sign things off. And I'm a single founder, so it's much harder. Yeah. And it's exactly that. I was like, but this isn't a job for me. This is like a calling. Like, this is something that I love doing. Yeah. And so it's a slightly different pull on emotions.
And I think when you also believe in the product so much and you see the results for people, you that's the incentive, right? Forward. You know, like I live for the testimonials. I live for the reviews. I live for the stories of people taking it. I think that's why you want to keep doing what you're doing.
And you are the perfect person to have on to talk about pregnancies, because So Equi is a supplements brand, and you really do specialize, and you have a lot of products for women that are either prenatal or postnatal, which I think is wonderful because I actually met someone the other day who actually didn't supplement until she was halfway through her pregnancy. And I was like, what? But I guess there isn't that much. I mean, I guess unless you come across someone who goes, take this or you need this, you can actually miss the boat on that a little bit, especially if you're busy and you're working and, you know, your things are just progressing. And postnatally, I know a lot of women who didn't supplement until very late.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I mean, it's interesting because, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of women who don't supplement in pregnancy or don't get round to it, especially maybe for their first time.
Yeah.
They're just
because
sort of going with it.
Head a little bit.
Or you may not even know. Some people don't even know they're pregnant until
really
3 or 4 months. You know, if you don't feel sick, sometimes you just don't realise.
Don't have any symptoms.
I was so ill, I don't know about you, but there's no way I could have missed it. I was literally unable to do anything.
Yeah.
So sick. But it's interesting you say that, because I think pregnancy is a time in a woman's life where she might, when she knows, be thinking, right, I have got to think about my health now. It's one of the most important times to be thinking about your health, because it's not just about you, it's about the baby.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, even some amazing stats actually about with girls, when you're pregnant with a girl, you are actually supporting your granddaughter or your grandson, because you are growing eggs in their ovaries.
Wow.
So you're talking about generations, you know, that you can have an impact on in a positive way. Don't freak out if you haven't done it all perfectly. That's not what we're saying, but it's just that I
think that long-term view that actually you're supporting something well into the future here.
Yeah, and also you're supporting your own well-being, because, you know, it's a demanding time mentally and physically. But so a lot of women, that's the time where they first get into supplements. They may have never actually taken anything in the past, but pregnancy is the first time. And then as soon as the baby's born, they've done all that work and they're like, right, baby's born, it's all about the baby now.
Yeah.
And this is a particular thing about the UK. This is in the UK a lot, right? This is actually in a lot of other cultures, India, Asia, this is not what happens. Okay. People really focus on the health of the mother following the birth. But in the UK, people tend to then stop supplements, stop thinking about themselves and just get on with it.
Yeah.
But actually, that is postnatally, that is the time where you should also be working on it. Even if whether you're breastfeeding, whether you aren't, because your body has been through so much, there are potential nutrient deficiencies. If you're also breastfeeding, that's a very, very demanding, calorific, but also nutrient demanding process. And you've really got to make sure that you're giving your body what it needs at that time to support you.
Yeah.
And there is a big thing about postnatal depletion. There's actually a book about postnatal depletion. It's by a doctor in Australia, where they're also really big on this. And it's a time where even if you have stopped breastfeeding or didn't breastfeed, you should still be taking supplements. Iron deficiency is very common, which can have huge impacts on us.
Yeah.
There are other things that, you know, can really impact your ability to cope during what is a very, very demanding time, you know, when you have a baby.
I think this is huge, and you're right. I was actually scrolling through on Instagram, and there are these centers in Korea where you can check yourself in as a mom. This video like blew my mind. You can check yourself in as a mom, and you can opt to stay there for like weeks, and they will do everything but feed the baby for you, and you can sleep and rest, and they give you food, and they feed you 3 times a day. And
I've got a Korean friend that does it. She goes back to Korea to have her children.
Blew my mind, because I don't even think that exists in the UK, even if you wanted to like pay for a hotel to do it for you.
Funny enough, it did exist. There was a place that did that in London, but I don't think it's around anymore.
But isn't that crazy, just in London? I mean, London may not... But
exactly.
And you're right, it's a cultural thing. We just soldier on and get on with it. I don't know about you and what your symptoms were, but I feel like in my first pregnancy, I mean, I was 29 when I got pregnant, 30 when I had her. So I was a little bit younger, and I sort of did bounce back a little bit and took everything a bit for granted. My second one, because I was already caring for the toddler and business and everything, my postnatal symptoms were a lot more profound. So I was literally, I would comb my hair and like a clump of hair would come out. And that was not immediately after I had her. That was like 3 months later. So I was like, why is this happening late? Like, no, about 3 months later, I'm not in a postnatal. Literally, I would say to myself, I'm not really postnatal anymore. Like, of course you are. But it's so not talked about.
No.
And I felt like I was the only person in the world that was like losing clumps of hair. And then I
oh
spoke
my
to friends,
gosh.
and they were like, I'm losing hair too.
Yes.
And so what are the symptoms that we might see?
Physical symptoms, definitely hair loss. And that might not happen immediately. It can be, there's like a 4-month shedding that happens.
Right.
This is going to depend on the person. It can also shed if you then stop breastfeeding because the hormones change. I think what's important to say actually is the two biggest hormonal events in a woman's life are just after you give birth, pregnancy, at the end of pregnancy, and perimenopause. Perimenopause is also a huge shift in your hormones, but it seems for most people to happen over a period of time, right?
Yes.
Whereas the change that happens after pregnancy is radical. It's sudden, it's instant. So that can impact so many different things. So of course it's going to be, the postnatal symptoms are going to be things like hair loss. It's also going to be a big change to your mood and to your general sort of like mental capacity and ability to cope, which of course is also affected by your sleep deprivation and all of that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot going on. So there's that side of things. Other symptoms that don't get talked about though, because I do feel like postnatal depression gets talked about. So the first period after you've had your baby can often be an absolute shocker for women.
Yes.
No one seems to talk about that.
No one talks about
and
it.
if you're going through that, anyone, that is often can just be the first couple. It often isn't the case that that will be forever, which is very good to
Kind
hear.
of a shock when it comes back, isn't it? You're like,
Yeah.
what? I forgot about this.
Yeah. And it was for me, it had been like, I don't know, 15 months, 16 months.
Yeah.
Because I did about 5 or 6 months of breastfeeding. So yeah, I mean, you know, it can be really heavy, it can be really painful, and that can be something that is just a reset, and it will get easier, which is good to know. But if it doesn't, and your periods remain really heavy, there's a couple of things to think about. One is iron deficiency. This is a really sort of annoying twist of fate. Low iron can cause heavy periods, and then heavy periods cause more low iron. So it can be a bit of a vicious cycle that happens. And so if you're experiencing really heavy, painful periods, and you're also feeling really tired, and by that tiredness, there's lots of different types of tiredness, aren't there? There's lack of sleep, there's, you know, mental exhaustion, there's low blood sugar, but there's also like a physical kind of like tired to your bone. That deep fatigue, that can sometimes be iron. It's really common. They say that 50% of women, this is globally, right, this is WHO fact, are deficient in iron at some point in their pregnancy. But after pregnancy, there's research that 30% of women, in this is more in developing countries, can be deficient in iron. So get your iron checked at some point postnatally. And you also want to get your ferritin checked. So going back to your hair.
Yes.
Ferritin is the storage compound of iron. So your blood has iron, and then it stores it away as ferritin.
Okay.
And a lot of that lives in your hair follicles. So if your ferritin dives, which it often happens after pregnancy, you can also find that's a cause of hair loss. That and the hormonal shift. So it's like a double whammy.
It is a double whammy. And you're not sleeping, and you're not eating properly. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Unless you have somebody helping you preparing meals, it was toddler meals for me for a little while until I had to like snap myself out of it and go, wait, I've got to start cooking again. At some point, I've got to weave cooking into all of this as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to start actually making meals again that are nutrient dense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, this comes down to like, let's support the children and forget about mum and, you know, oxygen mask mentality, right? So I would say definitely think about your iron. You know, other things like it's worth, if you can, seeing your GP and just having, and the NHS doesn't do this unless you really go in with a problem. And it's hard to get a doctor's appointment. Getting a doctor's
where
appointment.
do we check it? Because honestly, like, it feels like this. I don't know if you had a similar experience. For my second child, I didn't even get a 6-week checkup. You know, like they used to be
Was
a
it
6-week
COVID?
checkup. We're coming out of it. Yeah, it was sort of that pandemic-y period. And so maybe it has been reintroduced. But for people that are like, where do I actually go to check? Or is it worth just supplementing to make sure that that's not a issue for you?
Yeah, so this is where I think, well, first of all, your GP should be able to help. And, you know, you just got to bang the door down, which is really difficult to do when you've got a million other things to do. So I get that. But you've got to try and prioritise it. I would say that there are also like postnatal services that you can find within every council. So you might just need to do a bit of digging on that.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of websites where you can just pay. You do a finger prick test and you can pay to have your iron checked. It's actually not that expensive.
Yeah.
Vitamin D is another one at this time of year. We're now in November. Very important to think about getting your vitamin D, and that can really impact your mental state throughout the winter.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things, it's worth maybe just getting checked. But this is where a good supplement comes in.
Yeah.
Because it is, in an ideal world, we wouldn't need to supplement. We should get all of it from our lovely diet, and we're never stressed, and we get 8 hours sleep. But that's just not the reality. Our soils are more depleted. There's research saying that our soils are more depleted. Our food is not as nutritious. We're under huge physical and sort of mental demands. And, the constant phone thing, I think that people's nutrient demands are increasing.
Yeah,
and I think that our food is possibly not delivering on that at a time where ultra processed food
seasonally, are we anymore? Like, there's none of that. We're kind of just it's become all very unrealistic, isn't it? Like, we want to eat what we want to eat when we want to eat, and that comes at a cost, because some of this stuff is not going to be produced correctly or available.
Or it's going to be sprayed
processed, like you said.
Processed. Yeah, it's tough. But I don't think, remember, this isn't about being perfect. And I'm really clear about this. As a nutritionist, my whole ethos, and I think it's maybe why my clients like me, because I don't say to people, you've got to be perfect. I don't say to people, give up everything. It's not about restriction. It's about, I say to people, and this is, I'm not the only nutritionist saying this, but it's not about what you're taking out. It's about what you're putting in.
Yes.
Don't think about taking all the stuff out. Think about putting stuff in. Get the good stuff in there. Get the nutrients in there. And that's going to be really helpful. But and we can talk about some ideas on that. Just a daily smoothie.
I would love some ideas on that, because I think it's so nice you're coming to us as like, with lots of different caps, because I love that you're a mum and I love that you're a business owner, so we can connect on that. But then I also love that you're a nutritionist, because I think you can actually give people some really practical advice. Like, if someone's sitting there right now, babies, or maybe they don't have babies, they're a 20-year-old and they're slightly, pushed, as we do in our 20s, pushing the limits, which we kind of can get away with. Yeah. What's some really simple things, like just 2 or 3 quick fire things that they could literally listen to this podcast and implement this week?
So if they were postnatal, would you say, or any of that?
Any woman that's listening, or man.
I think, men too, right?
Absolutely.
We can't forget the men. I would say that consider a really good supplement. I do really believe that. It's supplements shouldn't replace our diet ever. This is about getting the support on top. But if you don't manage to eat well every single day, which I'm a nutritionist and I don't, supplements have your back in that sense, which is really, really helpful and supportive. Make sure you're choosing a brand that know their science, that have nutritionists behind it, that do their research, and that make sure that they talk about where they source their ingredients from, and they talk about provenance, and they talk about forms of ingredients, and there is that science there if you want it, to read about it. I would say that's really supportive, no matter what. We at Equi support women at every stage of life, whether you're a young professional, working, whether you're a new mum.
And don't you think if you instill this earlier, before you've even had kids, if you're listening and you're in your 20s and you get into these practices well before you even enter this stage of life, like, that is an amazing position to be in. Yeah,
right? Because it's true.
Then you're not necessarily going to be having the crazy hair. This stuff's not going to be alien to you when it's happening, because you're much more in tune with your body and understanding.
It would also be second nature. And I think, if a new mum comes to me and says, I've never really thought about nutrition, now I need to start thinking about it. That is a monumental thing to get your head around, whilst you've also got this new baby or new, massive change to your life. So this isn't about being perfect, so you can just start, make some changes, see how you get on, you'll feel better. So, but supplements, I think, are there to support us in those times where we don't get this right. So young professionals up to pregnant women, up to perimenopausal women, and everything in between. So that there's something that, there are so many supplement brands. Look for the ones that do that research, that have those nutritionists, that, they aren't just buying off-the-shelf products, gummy bears and, hot chocolates with collagen, maybe just have a look more into it. Yeah. Then I would say, if you can, 3 tips, it's really difficult to distill it. I think an easy one is, if you like them, a smoothie. Yeah. Sometimes just getting that in first thing can be your little ritual. Maybe you don't do it every day, maybe you do it 3 times. And you can get some berries, you can get some banana and some frozen, all this can be frozen. Yeah. Maybe you can put some kale, or you can put some spinach, or you can have some cucumber or some avocado. Get some veg in there, get some fruit in there. Blend it all up, put some flaxseed in, very good for women's health. Yeah. Men is also great for men, but women in particular really benefit from flaxseed because it has this estrogen supporting property. Very good for the digestive system as well, which is all really important. Maybe that alone.
That is a huge shift. And actually, that was
really powerful for some people. And if you do that first thing in the morning, or if you do that when you have your breakfast, when you have your coffee or your tea or whatever, that actually is a positive thing that you've gone and done. It's really quite empowering. It gets the day off to a good trajectory. And you can start off with a basic formula, basic ingredients, and then you build on that. And you might be adding a bit of cacao. You might be adding some Brazil nuts,
then you can get fancy.
Collagen.
Then you can get fancy.
I mean, like me, I've got like a whole drawer of stuff that is made for my smoothies. But that's an easy one, and that's an easy one. It's an achievable one for a new mum to do.
That was one of the best bits of advice I ever got postnatally. I can't even remember who gave it to me, but someone said to me, if there's nothing else you do, make yourself a smoothie every day. And it's the quickest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do. And like you said, if you really prepare and you just freeze everything, it then just becomes, you're just building a bear type thing. It's like one of those games. And I love that. And everyone can do that, can't they?
Yeah.
That's why
I would also say maybe another easy one is to just invest maybe half a day in just looking in your area what is easy, healthy, convenience food. So this might be, if Ocado is in your area, because I know it's not all over the UK, but if they are, they have a lot of brands on there that do healthy, convenience food really well. That's a real win. Or you might be looking at something like Mindful Chef or Fresh Fitness Food or the Detox Kitchen, or get one of these food delivery things where they're delivering you a box of food to make a meal.
Assemble it, don't you?
You just
assemble
it
together.
Put it together, and actually it's really quite cost effective.
Yeah.
Often it's delicious it's always delicious. It's really balanced and healthy. That could be a complete. I think for a lot of mums, especially, there's a headspace element to this that they just don't have the headspace. So that would be another tip, maybe. I mean, that's quite basic,
I love about it,
but
it's just a season of your life, isn't it? It doesn't have to be forever.
No.
It's just a season. And something I wanted to say to you at the beginning that I forgot to say was, when you're in it, it feels so consuming, and you're really in it at the moment, 3.5 and 10 months.
Yeah, I would think people could telling me I'm in the trenches.
You're in the trenches. I mean, people tell me I'm in the trenches. I'm at 4 and 2, but I do slightly sometimes feel in the trenches. But it gets better. The trenches get better.
Trenches.
No, the trenches get better. That's what I was going to say.
They're not as
Well, the trenches talk now, so that's really good. So they can tell me they can tell me when they're hungry and they need to go to the toilet. So that's what I was going to say. And it's just a season. And I think also that advice I got when I was really, really in the depths of it but actually I think it's my sister-in-law, she's ahead of me, and she's obviously got 10, 8 and 6 or something, and she was like, it's just a phase, it's just a season, and it passes. And it was such a liberating thought for me, because my nutrition, everything was out the way, and I just thought, if I just think of this as just 8 months, this is going to be really hard, but I just have to put a bit of extra effort in.
Yes.
I can get through it. And I did.
Yeah.
And I got through it, and I think really supporting myself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting, basically it's just a phase is like a golden piece of advice for anything to do. If you're a new, and I found that it's a phase thing very helpful with my first.
Yes.
And now I don't get so bothered if he has a couple of nights where he doesn't sleep so well, or he doesn't want to eat his lunch or something. You don't worry so much about that stuff, because you do know it will come good.
It's going to come good. And I think especially when you have an older one, everything you just start to cherish more with the little one, because you're like, this isn't going to last that long. They're not going to want to sit in my lap soon. No. So I'm just going to hold them as long as I can. And I think we can apply that to nutrition and everything, and just work a little bit extra hard on it in that period, knowing it's not always going to be that hard. No. Now I can take my supplement. I don't forget, because I have a bit more space in them,
But, keep the supplement on the side. And that's, we were saying earlier, this is Equi, and you will all get a discount code in the show notes for this, which hopefully you can take advantage of. But it looks good. So it on your nightstand, whether it's by your bed, or whether it's next to your kettle, or whether it's next to your coffee pods, or whatever it is, it looks nice. And I just think it's about forming the good habits.
Yes.
And a lot of nutritionists, I think, can overwhelm with all the different things that they suggest you do, and it's really overwhelming. Yeah. So maybe just start with one thing. Whether it's the smoothie, whether it's looking at getting a food delivery service, whether it's starting a supplement and taking it every day. I think with supplements, you've got to take them every day to feel the benefits.
Yeah.
But we've got women who have been, our success stories are insane when it comes to we started on skin, right? So the reason we launched the brand is because Rosie had terrible acne. Wow. She came off the pill. This is a very common story. Yeah. Came off. This is a whole other podcast episode.
We need to hear about this a little bit, because how many times do we hear women struggling with what pill to choose? how they feel after. Like, this is just such a huge topic that, again, doesn't really get talked about that much. And then you're left trying to figure this out by yourself with your GP and and, you know, it's a very personal journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And she came off the pill, having been on it for sort of 10 years to control her skin. And then she wanted to start trying for a baby, and she wanted to sort of get her body into a rhythm with her periods before she started trying. And then her skin just exploded. Within a month, her skin was full raging acne. Wow. So she came to me to help support that. And we worked together for, you know, within 2 months, I got her on a range of supplements, and her diet was actually pretty good. She was burning the candle at both ends in the city, you know, in a job in, you know, working in finance. So she was full on in that respect. But we got her on a range of supplements, and it cleared it up. Within a month, her spots had stopped forming. The redness had gone down, and the body was healing. And the reason why our approach is so different, why we decided to launch a product, was because, and I was working with hundreds of people at the time in Harley Street in my clinic for skin, which is an area I love. When you think about the skin, you've got to support it from the inside. It's no good just giving it collagen and vitamin C. It's very reliant on your digestive system and on your hormones, which, you stop the pill and your hormones go crazy. So that's what causes the skin problem. It also is very reliant on your stress systems, on your immune system, on inflammation. So in order to get results, your supplement has to support all of that. And that's why our approach is so unique and so different. There were no supplements like that on the market. I scoured the market looking for them for my clients.
Yeah.
So we wanted to launch that, and that's our entire approach. So
fueling from the insides to really change how we look
balancing, balancing your whole. We're all made up of these 10 systems, and they all need support in order to feel well. And so that's a functional medicine approach. That's what we do, which is we're the only supplement globally.
Skin is such a telltale symptom of how something that's happening in our body, right? Like it
can be
in all sorts of ways, can't it? Like acne or dermatitis or something else might be going on. Like you say, stress levels might be through the roof. Yeah. It always comes back to cortisol levels, doesn't it? I feel like every podcast we come back to stress. But isn't it just so telling that actually our body is always trying to signal to us that something's not right, and we're often just trying to suppress.
I mean, I would say if you're listening to this and you've got skin problems, don't start worrying that your whole body is, is in some really bad health. That's quite frightening for a lot of people to hear. It's not that, but there's a balance that can be addressed in there.
But I think what you said is so positive of like, actually, if you're having really bad skin problems, it can be fixed. Yeah. And it doesn't.
Absolutely.
And that's very reassuring. Yeah. Like, and it might not be 2 months for everybody, but it can be fixed through just what we fuel ourselves with.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, this is the power of nutrition. Blows me away. I mean, that's why I do what I do, right? Because it really, we don't understand fully yet, but we're learning more, and more research is happening about the impacts that nutrition can have on the body. It's just insane. I mean, this is also happening in perimenopause as well, which is a time where I think we hear now it's HRT or it's nothing. Don't bother unless it's HRT. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with HRT at all. I'm all full support of HRT. But we do also know that nutrition can have a huge influence on how you experience perimenopause. And, bearing in mind perimenopause is a process that can last for 10 years in women. Yeah. You can't just be reliant on one thing. You've got to support your body with exercise, with nutrition, and that has been scientifically shown to impact how you experience it. Yeah. The sooner you get started with this stuff and make some positive changes, the more benefits it's going to have on you long term.
What's the number one thing that somebody who's experiencing perimenopause, and perimenopause is like the onset of menopause, right? It's when we start
it's when hormones start going a bit up and down.
And we start maybe having broken sleep, or we start getting the hot flush, like things start to
anxiety. Yeah. Do you know what the other symptom I heard? Because I'm not perimenopausal yet. I'm not there yet, but and I have a lot of clients who are, but is rage.
Wow.
Apparently, this is something that doesn't get spoken about. Women experiencing this unbelievable, uncontrollable rage, and it's like one of the number one symptoms they want to manage when they and it can be one of the first symptoms that starts developing. Which is, and this is, I think there's a lot of conversation happening around this now, which is great because until recently, women have had no idea they're in perimenopause when actually they are. And they think they're going mad. They think they need antidepressants. They think they need a whole myriad of different things. They literally have given up their jobs, gotten divorced because they don't know what's happening to their body. But actually now we're learning that it's to tell people to just go and get their hormones checked, and maybe they need to take some HRT. Maybe they need to start addressing the hormonal changes that are happening in their body.
I still feel like that menopausal woman is still depicted like it almost as a like movie character of the woman that's having like hot flashes, like, you know, a bit all over the place, and almost depicted as a bit crazy and going through this and that.
Yeah.
We just need to talk about it, because we're all going to go through it. Like, it's coming.
Absolutely.
Every single one of us, all we're going through it right now. And I think we just need to really start normalizing it, because it's really not fair to navigate this on your own. And I think I mentioned to you, like, someone very close to me was like, I'm going through something and I don't feel like myself anymore. She was obviously going through perimenopause, and she's like, I just don't feel like myself. And really, like, it's really hard to hear that, and
really hard.
Because also, like, there are ways that we can actually resolve it, like you say, but it's just not spoken about enough. So if someone is going through perimenopause, what's the number one nutrient that they are probably needing, or is there not one and there's a myriad?
I couldn't give you one.
There's a couple of things they could go supplement with today, because I actually got asked this exact question, Alice. They were like, what can I add today? And I obviously can talk about fitness all day long. And I need to exercise.
I was going to say, we haven't spoken about fitness.
Because exercising, I think, is one thing you can do. And I actually spoke to her recently, and she said, I've never felt more fit in my life. I'm exercising 4 times a week and I feel amazing. Complete turnaround. And I was like, thank you. And I actually did say to her, don't like do all this intense stuff right now. Like, maybe do that once a week, like go for a run, but please be mindful with your body right now as well.
Don't overdo it, for sure.
Don't overdo it. Stretch, Pilates, mat work, be in tune with your body. Because I think the more you listen in, the better you can start to control symptoms. But if there's something they could just add, what would it be?
I would, if I had to choose one thing, it's a very difficult question to answer.
Sorry.
And it's sort of like a quick one. I would say magnesium.
Magnesium
Has been shown to have a really positive impact on your ability to control your temperature. So hot and cold, hot flushes. But it's also very good for anxiety. It's very good for focus and mental sort of, I can't even find the words to say it. So like sort of sharpness and agility. But also it's brilliant for anxiety, because we know anxiety can be one of the first symptoms that creeps on for perimenopausal women. So magnesium is probably one of the top ones, and you want a good form of magnesium. But again, the change in your hormones that happens at this time impacts your entire body. So a lot of menopause supplements will be just focusing on the hormonal balance, or they'll just focus on the mental side of things. But actually, the perimenopausal symptoms can affect your gut. They can affect your brain and your mental symptoms. They can affect your energy levels. They can affect your sleep cycles, and of course your skin and your hair. So if you really want to make a difference, you need a supplement. Obviously, there's your diet, critical, but if you want a supplement that's going to make a difference, it needs to address all of that. And that, again, is why Equi is so effective for perimenopausal women. We've got women who can't be without it. They really find it's absolutely essential as an essential kind of, we like to sort of feel like we're holding the hands of women at this time, because it can be so destabilizing. It can be so, it can blindside you, and that's why the supplement can have such a huge impact on how you're feeling. And I think that you've got to support the whole body. That's the critical thing.
There's no like one. I'll put you in a very difficult spot there, just asking for one. But what I'm trying to give is people that real actionable, like if there's, for some people it's
one product you can just take daily. So that's a win.
That's amazing.
We take all the confusion out of it, so you haven't got to go and look in a million supplement aisles. How do you know what to support your body with?
Exactly.
If you knew, you can't even find these ingredients if you even knew what to look for, and you'd be spending.
We're not really taught about it either, are we? Like no one really tells us what to do, so we're just figuring it out by ourselves, and probably having some really rubbish years, and then finally we find something that works, and it's a bit, could have found that years before, and that's what we want to prevent. We want to get people like doing the right things really early on, so that anyone that listens to this, and fingers crossed we get people just listen to this well into their 20s and they're like, oh my God, I can start to do this all now and research it.
And that is not wasted, because the healthier you go into pregnancy, the healthier you go into perimenopause, the healthier you go into anything, the more strong, the better you are in that better stead that you're in to support your whole body through that process. So we know that if you're in a good place mentally and physically going into perimenopause, you probably will experience it more easily. And there's a lot of women who don't go through don't have horror stories. So it's possible to do this. It's possible to have easy pregnancies as well.
We've just had an episode about why your 40s could be the best decade of your life rather than one of the most in upheaval, because actually it's a lot of this. It's the preparation that goes into into that decade and the mindset you go into it with, right? And knowing menopause is on its way. So you might as well embrace it and all of the amazing shifts. And she even referred to it being called the second spring.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so wonderful.
I think it can be a very life-affirming decade, and your 50s as well.
Yeah.
You know, and actually there's no reason why it can't be just as life-affirming as the first stage in your life.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a different phase, but it's I think there's a whole kind of we need to unlearn a lot about what we've learned.
Yes.
And we need to try to reframe how people see menopause, because it isn't the sort of women having a hot flush in a cupboard.
Oh my God, I know.
Like,
absolutely.
it's not that.
It's coming for all of us. So it's like, actually, this is going to be, it's not like pregnancy. You can be pregnant or not pregnant. You can choose not to have kids and maybe not. But actually, you're going to experience something, although our symptoms might be different. So let's just think about it now. Yeah. And I think actually we're going to have great menopauses because we're going to start thinking about it super early.
Well, here's hoping. Here's hoping. Yeah.
We have to wrap up very soon, so it's probably going to have to be my last question. But you work with so many clients, and it's so amazing to have somebody who has so much experience on the podcast today. What's the number one thing that you would say women come to you about? Because there must be some common threads that you start to tie, and it doesn't have to be about pregnancy or menopause, just women in general. And if you could just leave us with one little piece of, I guess, imparting advice, which you've given us lots of advice actually already, but and it might be the cortisol thing, so do you feel like that keeps coming up? But is there something that you actually think is quite a common thread between all the decades that we can get a hold of?
Yes.
On the nutrition side as well as the...
Yeah, I guess... I mean, people come to me for all sorts of things, so it's difficult. But I would say that the juggle is real, right? No matter what phase of life you're in.
Yeah.
And possibly that does, let's face it, get harder when you've got children. And it's also, if you're in perimenopause, that is often a hugely demanding time in your life with, elderly parents or teenage kids or not teenage, whatever's going on. Maybe you don't have any, maybe you're a CEO, maybe you don't have any of those things, but it's often a very demanding time. Yeah. I think it's that mental load thing that women, that can be the reason why they don't necessarily manage to get on top of their nutrition, because they just can't get themselves to a point where they're actually doing it, even though they want to. And if a woman's come in to see me, that's the hardest bit, right?
Yeah.
So it's once you're there, actually, you can start making the changes slowly. And I would probably say to anyone, no matter what phase of your life, just do one thing. Yeah. Maybe just start with one thing. Don't think about changing everything overnight, because that is not sustainable. If you're going to make changes, they've got to be consistent. Consistency is key to long-term change. So maybe you just start with one thing. Yeah. And that might be, a lot of people don't manage to actually start making changes because that deterrent is, I've got to change everything. Yeah. But you don't.
It feels completely overwhelming, doesn't it?
It feels really overwhelming. And I think that can be the case for anyone at any age. But if you just start with one thing, it's amazing how quickly that actually can snowball, particularly as you feel better. Yeah. And when you feel better, you're more able to do it. So it could be that that's a workout. Yeah. Rosie Rosie, her entire she manages her stress. She does, exercise is absolutely critical for her. She sees her PT once a week and it's everything to her. Yeah. She feels stronger. She's able to cope better and she looks great. That gives her confidence. Maybe was her one thing. My one thing might be ordering Mindful Chef. I don't know. Yeah. I don't work for them, by the way. But, or someone else might be try a supplement. Yeah. Or try the smoothie. Just try one thing if you're feeling overwhelmed by it.
Lean into whatever feels easiest and attainable for you today and stick with that, right? And you're right. It might just pick whatever is just closest to you that you can just get done. Yeah. I love that. And I love that you're not like a nutritionist who, just... There's just so many rules, and no, because some people are like that, right? And that's, I guess, what scares people off from going to see a nutritionist, because they're really scared about the overwhelm of everything that they might suggest. I normally finish with the same question for every guest, but for you, we didn't even get into launching a business, which I wanted to cover today, because you are also a founder, aside from all this nutrition talk. You're actually a founder.
I'll have to come back. I'll have to come back.
We'll have to have Rosie on too. But, I'm going to give my last question to you a little bit differently. If someone is sat there today feeling really inspired by this talk and wanting to take like a hold of their life and actually maybe has an idea, doesn't have to be in the wellness space. Could you, going back 8 years ago to when you set this all up, because it's probably been such a journey, could you give any advice to an aspiring founder of something that they could do, or like how you got started with a business idea? Because you also have a business that we haven't really got into.
I know. And I started the business before I had children, right?
Yes.
Both of us, it took us a couple of years to get it off the ground, which is why Rosie gave birth at like that time. Neither of us were sort of pregnant or thinking about kids at that time, but I'm
sure it's been a roller coaster.
Yeah, one piece of advice. Oh my gosh.
Or just something that really helped you take the launch with Equi, because
yeah, you've got to. There's a leap of faith that has to happen there, isn't there? And that is, I think having a solid foundation of partnership, knowing what you set out to do, be really clear on that from the beginning, because as you get busier and busier, it's easy to lose sight of what you set out to do, and what your sort of fundamental principles are.
Yes.
I would also say, and I know this sounds like a really stupid thing to say, but just make sure you can make money on it. Like, make sure that you can, like, you know how you're going to make money. There's like a plan in place for how you're going to generate cash, or you're going to churn, or whatever that is. Because a lot of people, they do have a great idea, but they actually haven't figured out how they can monetize it.
Yes.
And it might take quite a long time to make that happen. I'm not saying that's going to happen overnight, but at least there's a business model so that you can monetize it.
Yeah.
I've seen a few businesses not quite have that clear in their heads. So, know what you're going to set out to do, and stick to that, and then know you can monetize it.
And then I feel like you and I share one, which would probably be just to be patient.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've had to be patient along the journey.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I wanted the podcast was because I listened to so many men talk about their businesses, and there was no blip that was kids. It was like, and then we did this, and then we did this. And then I'm like, where's that 4-year gap?
Yeah.
Wait. Pause the podcast. What happened when you're talking about these kids that are 16 now?
Yeah.
What happened and no one talked about it. And I've definitely learned that we're on a different journey.
Yeah.
Because we're also trying to be present mothers and not miss every second. Like I was telling you, like today my daughter's off school and she's gone off to have an experience for the first time, and it's balancing that, isn't it? And going, okay, today I'm working, but then tomorrow I'll be with my children, and the day after that, it's sort of that as well.
Yeah, totally. I think it will probably take a bit longer for if you have got kids, small kids, and that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah. Let's normalize that.
Yeah.
It doesn't all have to be these crazy timelines.
No, exactly.
Because you're doing a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, and it can be really stressful if you are trying to get it done like now.
Yes.
It's so there is a patience that has to come with it. Yeah, you're right.
Which is hard with type A personality.
Yeah.
Because slowing your brain down is tough.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, we've covered so much. And there's so much more I would still like to cover, because it's rare to have somebody that ticks all of the boxes, because the 3 pillars are motherhood, wellness, career, which I told you, and I think you tick every single one. So there's lots of different angles here, but it was really, really insightful. I think lots to think about, lots to take away. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And guys, like Alice mentioned, we are so lucky to get a 10% code for Equi. So we're going to be popping that on the screen here, and we're going to be putting it in the show notes. And if you're not already topping up with a supplement, this is probably...
It's actually going to be 20% as well.
Oh, 20%. Amazing.
Yeah,
okay,
20%.
There we go. So that code will be available. And so do look into that if that is something that has struck you today. Thank you so much, Alice.
Really good to see you. Thanks.